Well, President Trump is headed back to the White House this morning after a busy 4 days in Japan. The country is one of America's closest allies, home to more than 50,000 U.S. troops, and he spoke to about 1,000 of them yesterday in honor of Memorial Day. Meanwhile, at a news conference over the weekend, the president openly disagreed with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe about North Korea's recent short-range missile launches. They're largely seen as a threat to both Japan and U.S. service members who are stationed there. Laura Podesta has been covering this story now. And Laura, it sounded like the president really didn't think they were that big of an issue.
Exactly. So the president does not consider the short-range missiles to be a violation of the UN Security Council resolutions, which Abe obviously does. So they can't seem to agree over how big a threat Kim Jong-un continues to be in the region. There was also a lack of an agreement over trade. It's clear that Japan wants to make sure it doesn't become entangled in a trade war like we're seeing between the U.S. and China. But Trump made no promises he wouldn't raise tariffs on Japanese exports in the future.
President Trump spent his final hours in Japan visiting troops stationed at a naval base south of Tokyo.
I want to start by saying Happy Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day.
The base in Yokosuka is jointly operated by the U.S. and Japan.
This is the only port in the world where an American naval fleet and an allied naval fleet are headquartered side by side.
At a stop aboard a Japanese destroyer, Mr. Trump touted the strength of the U.S. alliance with Japan. He also led a rally on the U.S. side of the base, attended by nearly 1,000 members of the armed forces. Earlier in the day, though, the president broke with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Abe expressed concern over recent missile tests by North Korea. President Trump seemed less worried.
All I know is that there have been no nuclear tests. There have been no ballistic missiles going out. There have been no long-range missiles going out. And I think that someday we'll have a deal.
While the trip to Japan produced no breakthroughs on trade or national security, it did allow the president to spend several hours huddling with leaders of a crucial U.S. ally. Prime Minister Abe said he will work to broker peaceful dialogue between the U.S. and Iran as tensions escalate.
All right, so you mentioned Iran in the end there. Does the president think that denuclearization is a reality for Iran?
Absolutely. So he said over the weekend that he does think he can make a deal with Iran. But we're already hearing from Iran. A spokesperson for their foreign ministry is pushing back and saying that they do not plan to negotiate with the U.S.
Well, I'm sure they're probably saying, we sort of had a deal and you pulled out. I just want to go back to this stabbing incident in Japan. It sounds horrific. We know that I think a little girl is perhaps one of the people killed. Did the president mention this at all?
Yeah, so when he was speaking earlier today, he did offer condolences to the victims and their families. We do know an 11-year-old girl was among the dead and a 39-year-old man, possibly her father or one of the parents of one of the children who were also injured. So the suspect is dead. He killed himself. And right now there is no motive, but a big shock to a country that has such a low crime rate.
Indeed. Laura, thank you very much. We're going to talk a little bit more about this incident in Japan later on in the show.